we need to play the appropriate music. So that's what we're going to do right here. And make a call. Ah, yes. The magic of the NHL in the day 1979. Because we're looking for Liam Maguire.
Hello.
And there he is right there, Liam Maguire. How's she going by?
How's she going?
I just played that clip from 1979 where Terry O'Reilly goes over the boards. I forgot how the game ended because there's Espo wearing that number 77 going in.
Yeah.
Cheevers makes a huge save, and then they all congregate at the middle of the ice, like I said, like West Side Story. And every word coming out of their mouth, I'm sure, is one of those inappropriate penalties that we get for all the things that are called now. And next thing you know, O'Reilly like Spider-Man, like 1 second he's on the ice and then he's in the stands. And I'm sure for the young people that are watching the show who do every day are looking at it going, what planet, what world was that in? But I think even for the day, that was one of the more, if not most stunning episodes on the big stage. And we're talking Madison Square Gardens that I've ever seen to this date.
The thing is that at that point, that was 1980, and it was the last time that definitively anyway that many players went into the stands. The very next season is when they finally extended the glass to make it impossible to climb over, because at that point in NHL history is well documented. In fact, one of the worst was when the Montreal Canadiens went into the stands in Boston, and there's video footage of that. Mike, that you may have to find sometime, because I believe in the center of it, about 10 row deep, is Jean Beliveau.
Oh boy! And
he's directing traffic, and you know the whole thing disintegrated as they always do. But there's been some bad ones. I mean, the police came on the ice in Chicago one time and arrested 3 members of the Montreal Canadiens in the late 40s and took them to jail. And Dick Irvin Sr. had to go down, bail them out. They had to make a court appearance. Everything got dismissed. But there's been some crazy moments in hockey history. That one's so visual because there's video footage of it. The one in Montreal Boston doesn't get showed very often, but it's on YouTube as well. You can find it. And the irony there is that John Ferguson didn't play in that game. Fergie was suspended. He wasn't in that game. And with all due respect to the Bruins and the big bad Bruins at that time, nobody wanted any part of Fergie. He didn't play in that game. They took advantage of that, went after Montreal pretty hard, but there was some great fights. And it ended up in the stands in Boston. Without one in New York, and especially, as you say, because of the Mecca, Madison Square Gardens, and especially because Milbury's hitting the guy with his own shoe, it gets pretty crazy. It's surreal. It's almost, well, let's be honest, it's Slapshot. That's what it is. Yeah. It really is.
Yeah.
And it could have been part of Slapshot and may have been the most graphic part of Slapshot, but nonetheless, great to talk to you, Liam, this morning. Last couple of days, I guess our fan base and yourself have been going back and forth on a video that Mike sent out with the Maple Leafs and the Atlanta Flames, and I kind of joked about it during it that the thing I forgot was how all the players would come off the bench to celebrate a goal, and if we're watching that NHL game today, how pissed off the opposition would be. When did that actually stop? How did it stop? And what's the background behind it? Because I know you have the answers to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned that on the Twitter feed. The videos are great, obviously, and it was great to see. So it happened that year. So basically, that's a Scotty Bowman phenomena. He started it with the Montreal Canadiens. He started sending the guys, not all the time, but big goals, third period, a game, a Lafleur goal, whatever. He'd send the guys. The other teams picked up on it, and I don't think anybody in the NHL head office really knew what to do with it at that time, because it all basically originated. I mean, you'd get the odd one prior to that, but very, very rare. But by 79, when that happened, this was a much more common occurrence. The next round of the playoffs, the Canadiens, of course, were doing it again. They're playing the semifinals against the Boston Bruins. Leafs had been eliminated by then. Montreal's playing Boston in the semis, and the Rangers on the other side in the final. So what happened was Scotty was sending the Habs, and Don Cherry started sending the Boston Bruins at the same time. So even if Montreal scored against Jerry Cheevers or Gilles Gilbert and Scotty cleared the bench, Don would clear the bench. So now you got 40 guys on the ice. And Clarence just went, okay, whoa, enough's enough. And they passed an immediate rule, and they called it illegal celebration. And you needed, from that point on, you had to have permission from the league if there was an incident that a player was going to celebrate a milestone or for whatever reason that you wanted to clear the bench, you had to have written permission. And if you didn't, your team would be assessed a delay of game penalty for illegal celebration. That was in the semifinals of 1979. The first time the penalty was ever called was by Kerry Fraser on December 30th, 1981, the night that Wayne Gretzky got 50 goals in 39 games.
No!
And there was 3 seconds to go in the game, and Kerry, for fun, got the score. Wayne scored his 5th goal into an empty net against the Flyers, as many people probably remember.
Bill Barber couldn't stop the empty net goal. That's right.
Bill Barber wearing the Cooperalls couldn't stop it.
I love
and
it.
The puck went in. Kerry makes the call. Now, fast forward to 2012. I'm in Fort McMurray with Wayne Gretzky, Brian Trottier, Darren Langdon, Kelly Chase, Marty McSorley, and the late Dave Semenko doing a big charity event for the weekend. I'm riding around in a limo with Wayne. Wayne says, so how much do you really know? And I said, well, I could stump you on your own career. And he says, no, you couldn't. I said, yeah, easily. So I stumped him 3 times on his own career in 5 minutes. And I asked him the question. I said, Wayne, remember the night you got 5, get 50 at 39, as if you wouldn't, right?
Yeah.
And he says, yeah. And he's thinking I'm going to ask who the Flyer goalie was because everybody thinks it was Lindbergh, it was Pete Peters.
Yeah.
He's going to think whatever. He's going to ask 100 other questions. He's going to put who got the second assist on the goal. It was Grant Fuhr, whatever. I said, no, Wayne. Do you remember it was a penalty? Illegal celebration. He says, well, not really. I said, yeah, it was the first time it was ever called. Who served it? What Edmonton Oiler served the penalty? So he goes through, I swear to God, he goes through the entire roster except for one guy. He misses the guy who served the penalty, which was Doug Hicks. Doug Hicks served the penalty.
I love it.
So Wayne is incredulous, right? He says to me, he says, Jesus, you know what? Doug used to come in the dressing room and tell me and Mark Messier obviously, that he was Bobby Orr's last defense partner ever in Chicago. And I go, you know what? That's a great one. I said, I didn't know that. Let's find out. So I pick up my phone. Remember, we're in a limo in Fort McMurray. I send Bobby Orr a message. And I say, hey, Bobby, I'm riding a limo with Gretzer, Trottier, and all the boys. We're doing a big thing in Fort McMurray, talking about Doug Hicks. Do you remember Doug Hicks saying that he was your last defense partner in 1978? You played those 6 games for Chicago. Was he your last defense partner? And, Wayne's looking at me like I got 2 heads. I put my phone back down. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzes. I look at it. It's a message back from Bobby Orr. Hey, Liam, tell Gretz I said hi, and yeah, you're right. Doug Hicks was my last defense partner ever. So
man.
we're in a super stretch limo. I mean, it's on a bus frame. This thing's 40 feet long. Wayne's up by the driver. I'm at the back by the cooler. And Wayne comes flying across that limo like a 10-year-old kid, grabs my arm and says, who is that? I said, it's Bobby Orr. You've met him 1,000 times. Yeah. He's telling you that you're right. Doug Hicks was Orr's last defense partner. And he's holding up my arm saying, hey, look, I was right, like a kid. So that whole thing, there's the backstory of the first call of illegal celebration, December 30th, 81, after the rule came in 1979, courtesy of Don Cherry clearing the bench along with the Montreal Canadiens. That actually was, we also saw with the Toronto Maple Leafs against the Atlanta Flames when the Leafs scored 3 goals in 23 seconds, breaking the previous record by 33 seconds set by the Montreal Canadiens in 1954. And there is the rest of the story.
Love it.
There it
what
is.
A great
there
story.
is the rest of the story, but not quite the rest of the story. Because you'd mentioned yesterday, and we saw back and forth on Twitter, that there was a shout-out to John Shannon at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. How cool is that? So I'm watching the clip. And I remember that game because I was on Hockey Night in Canada. The Canadians didn't play that night. And I remember watching that game. And Darryl and I had become good friends. And Ronnie Ellis, I'm friends with all these guys. So I've watched that many times. But I hadn't watched it in years. And like a lot of the clips you play, Mike, and you guys play. And I'm looking at it, I'm reading it, or I should say listening to it, and I hear Brian McFarland say, we'll get our stats guy, John Shannon. I went, wait a minute, what? So I go back and check it again. And I put on Twitter, and of course, Johnny sits in and says, yeah, man, it was me. I mean, how cool is that? Yeah. That is so cool. I mean, John Shannon later became, as you guys know, the executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada. Yep. And now he's doing a great job, I think. And there he was back in the day in the late 70s. Keep in mind, this is the height of Harold Ballard, right, in his absolute sheer lunacy days, sitting up in the bunker with King Clancy and all the rest. And there's John Shannon working the stats with Brian McFarland. I just thought that was fantastic.
That's why we love playing these old clips. Like, I never thought that obviously doing this for years, that you sort of grow up in a generation where they're more memories than they are anything else. But then when you look back at it, it just is amazing to see just the differences and the subtleties in the game. And I don't know. I think they're great little throwbacks. And of course, some of it, again, depending on your age group, you look at it and you're like, I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to do that with the stick now. No. It looked like, I said back in the day, it looked like Braveheart on skates.
Listen, the decade of the 1970s in particular was the most roughest decade in hockey and probably in sports anywhere. There's no real way you could explain that to the millennials today, and really, frankly, to be honest, to a lot of the left wingers in the media who cry about the fighting, which is basically you need to have that on your resume to get a job at the Hockey News. And it's just a real sorry state of affairs to some degree, that people don't understand that there's an element of physicality that still exists in the game. It's like everybody expects these guys to go out there and be a choir boy. They're in their 20s, they're alpha males. It's a big business. There's a lot of dollars on the line, even though they're well paid. And you're carrying a weapon, you're skating at 25 miles an hour. It's a collision sport. Guys are going to get pissed off, and things are going to happen. And they've done so many changes to the rules, and everybody's afraid of concussions, and there's helmets and visors and this, that, everything else. It can't take away the intentions. There's no other sport that moves like that and carries a weapon and plays with no out of bounds. Like, you've got the boards. It's right there. And so sometimes things are going to happen. But you turn the clock back when it was much more prevalent, and certainly you talk about the accountability. It's just, if there was a price to pay. If you ran a superstar, and it's not to say it didn't happen, it did. But if you did, there was a price to pay. And Flyers won 2 cups and played in 3 straight finals with that mantra. And frankly, when the Montreal Canadiens took over and won those 4 straight, they largely did it on the backs of an exhibition game at the start of the 75-76 season in Philadelphia, a game that was not completed, refereed by Bruce Hood. He called it with 3 minutes to go. There was no players left to play it anyway. It basically kicked everybody out. But Scotty Bowman dressed every single enforcer going down to Bougainville, Quebec, that he could find, that could walk and skate and chew gum, and dressed them in that game. And they brawled the Flyers right out of Philadelphia. And they went back on that plane in Montreal. And you can ask Larry Robinson. He brawled that night too. And he said, we just took them all. We took them all and said, enough's enough. And that changed the temperament and they met in the finals that year. Montreal beat them 4 straight, and there was 1 fight. Mario Tremblay and Moose Dupont. That was the only fight in that series.
Wow.
Yeah. What a story. Hey, speaking of stories, so I'm driving to work today, Liam, and I'm talking to my brother. And
speaking of guys who get in fights.
Yeah, speaking of guys that get into fights, a much bigger version of me, firefighter in Winnipeg, and I told him that you're going to be on the show today. So he says to me, so he says to me, remember the time we were watching OTR and Liam was on with Gene Mack? And I said, yeah, of course I remember, because that's kind of my first introduction to you, kind of thing. And now, I'm really happy to say that you're a friend now in 2018 here. But so we're watching you on TV, and we're watching the give and take between you and Gene Mack. And this is a little off topic, but now that I have you here, I got to ask you, was the heat real? And how did that actually start? Because he was pissing you off so much.
G-Mac, a former football player, he's not small.
No, exactly. And
no, he's not small. He's way bigger than me.
Yeah. He's bigger than all of us.
That was 1,000% real. Nothing. I've never faked anything. I've been fortunate to have been in the public eye, if you call that fortunate or not. It's just the way I've carved out a living for 35 years. Good, bad, or indifferent, I've done my best, and I've tried to be as real as possible. I've never been a fence sitter. And the couple things, I guess, if I'm going to make claims, I'll take it to my grave, is I'll back this country and this flag 24/7.
Yep.
And the history with Gene and I, that show started in 97. I went on the first time in 98, January 6th, and the show went fairly well. And then they brought me back in March, and then they brought me back in October 98, and they put me on with Gene Mack. Now, I'd seen him on a couple of times, and I knew he was a volatile guy and a former football player. and we got into it pretty good. It didn't get personal or anything, but it was pretty heated. And obviously Landsberg knew I give Michael credit. I think he suspected he had something here. So he brought us back that following January, which was my second January on the show, and about my fifth or sixth show overall. I ended up making 44 appearances on that show. And every January that I was on, I would wear a Canadian tie. I wore the Canadian tie to support the World Junior team.
Yes.
It's the only reason I wore it. I didn't wear it any other time I was on the show at that point. I wore it in January on the show to support the World Junior team. So I had it on. And Gene showed up. So we had done the show 4 months earlier. He showed up. He was late for the taping. That's what's called live to tape. We taped in the afternoon, but they taped it with the commercials, put it in everything else. So whatever you said, you said. It was going on. And he came in late. He I could tell something was off right away. He just didn't look right. And he was staring at my tie. He was staring at me. I think he was, whatever. And we start the show. And within the first block, at one point, we're talking about something, and we agreed on it. So he reached across. We actually shook hands. That never gets shown because all everyone shows is the one clip. But we actually shook hands, and I was going, okay, this is going to go all right. Because I was a little trepidatious. He's like 6'2" and change, about 240. And I'm not. and what happened was we went to break, we come back, and then it started. Michael Landsberg made a comment about Dennis Rodman and showed the clip of Rodman wearing the wedding dress. And I called Rodman an idiot. And then Gene took exception to it, so it started slow. And then he made a comment, and then he insinuated that I was saying that making a racial overtone. I was going, whoa, hold on. And then I said, okay, let's say his behavior is idiotic. And then he said, well, some would say, you're an idiot for wearing a tie like that. Boom. Okay, now it's on.
Yeah.
And so, the rest is history. I didn't respond well to that. It escalated, and then the crutch of it, as Landsberg's just sitting back watching it, and then he says, I made a mistake. He's pointing at me saying I made a mistake wearing that tie. I'm going, really? A mistake like your parents made when they had you?
Oh,
and then
nice.
And he wanted to kill me. And we went to break. That was a pretty horny 5 minutes, I'll tell you right now. First of all, Kathy Smith, who was in the middle, that's a 3-person panel, she bolted. That's all the shows I did 44 of them. There was never a bigger entourage. Now, I'm not making any statement about this, whether it was right or wrong. I was going to say this. They were not, let's call it a very physical entourage. It wasn't like she was with security. There was a lot of people that were just there, probably mostly worked on makeup type stuff. Let's put it that way. And they bolted. There was about 12 of them. They were gone. They were in the wind. Meanwhile, Gene is standing up, saying he's going to kill me. I'm going, look, I've been in enough stags in North Gore. If you want to dance, big boy, let's go. And it's an absolute crap show. And security comes flying in. Landsberg's hitting his button. People are running in, trying to sort it out. It took us 20 minutes to get everything back. They had to chase Kathy Smith down whatever street there, Channel 9 Court, whatever, and get her back in. Actually, we were taping that somewhere else at that point. That's in '99, and up in Scarborough somewhere else. Anyways, get us all back sitting down. Get everybody. You can cut the tension with a knife. Landsberg starts off the taping again, and the first question's on Mike Tyson.
No.
First question's on Tyson. So Gene starts again. He starts hitting me again, and then no. Listen, there was nothing fake about that at all. We didn't do a show again together for 11 months. They brought us back on with Howie Meeker.
Oh, boy.
Gene and I sat there like a couple of grade 4 school kids that had gotten the strap back in the 60s with basically sitting on our hands. Landsberg at the end of the show, they had to beep Howie Meeker twice. He was dropping F-bombs, and he had no history. He didn't even know what was going on between us. Howie was being Howie, and then Landsberg at the end of the show says, are you guys even going to look at each other? We didn't even look at each other. And then the show ended. I didn't do another show with him again until 2007.
Wow.
That was the next time I was on the air with him. Keep in mind, he got kicked off, eh? He went nuts on Beverly Mahood, a little beautiful little country western singer.
Yeah, we've had her on the show.
I love Beverly.
5'0"
Yeah.
She's 5'0", and Gene's leaning in her face. And, he's a bully. The guy's a bully. That's what it boils down to, fellas. The guy was a bully, and I'll maintain to this day, In my view, he took a shot at the Canadian flag. And it's just the way I sensed it that day. I can't go back in time and change it. And I'll say something else if you don't mind, seeing as you brought it up. I mean, the overwhelming majority of the reaction, not all of it, but the overwhelming majority of the reaction was positive, at least to my face. I know a lot of people took shots at me, and that's fine. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I have such a thick skin about all that now. I know a lot of people don't like me, and I don't care. But most people were supportive of my reaction to him. There was one goof that I'd like to meet, and he wrote for the TV Guide at the time. His last name was McInnes, and he wrote the most disparaging column about me that I've ever had written, and I've had some stuff that's been written about me, believe me. And I'm no Don Cherry. I'm not that. I don't have that profile, but I've been around. I've done some things. And if I ever meet that guy, I'll tell you what, I will have a conversation and even though that's 19 years ago, that was one of the most disparaging things, that he didn't have a clue, and I thought it was so unfair. I'm just sitting there trying to do a show, and this guy took a shot at the Canadian flag. So maybe you didn't have the balls, buddy, had you been in the same spot to step up and say something, but I did.
Exactly,
Love
Liam.
it.
And here's the thing: you'll never meet that loser. You'll never meet him. He's a spare. He's a nobody. So the only McInnes we know is a guy who takes a slap shot, and his name is Al. That's the only one that you're ever going to know. We will know about someone like that, and that's what makes careers. It's what makes people either popular or unpopular. The fact is, and I learned a long time ago, even in jest, once you go after someone's sort of national pride, so let's say it's even like World Cup soccer, whatever it is, if you start messing with someone's flag, just don't do it. It's not funny. You're not gonna gain any favor by doing it. And I'll tell you, when it was the Team 1050 all those years ago. So it's myself and Paul Romanek, and Romy, for whatever reason, he's still a very good friend, but he has the worst comedic timing in the history of man. This man does things that he thinks is hilarious, and they're an abomination. Wars would start over what Romy thinks is funny. And so during that World Cup, so it's like 2000, 2001 in there somewhere, 2002, I have an Irish flag, obviously, on my car. And I just got it, and I've never done it before. Those little plastic things you stick in the window, and I park it, I go out the next day, it's gone. And I am burning for like 4 or 5 days. Like I'm burning all week long because I don't know who ripped down the flag. And we get on the air, it's a Friday, and he goes, guess what, Mikey? I took the flag. I looked at him like he wasn't sure. Like there's the fire in the Irish eyes. Like I wanted to kill him. I wanted to strangle him. And it's Paul Romanek. You can do it with a baby finger. Like it's not going to be a big fight.
Absolutely.
And you don't call out someone, especially when you're sitting. During the World Juniors, you got a Canadian. You know what I mean? I just don't. I don't understand that thing.
No.
Now let's. Because I know we're going to run out of time here, but the one thing about national pride and Canadians generally, they group together when it's on the ice. When you're wearing that maple leaf on your chest, there's a switch that goes off. But I will say this, and because I said it the other day on Twitter, this past Olympic tournament, and I get it's moments for some guys that they'll never again have in their life, and they'll cherish it. And for those families, they'll have that jersey in their household, and that will be enshrined. But it couldn't keep my attention only because I think at this point I've been so spoiled. Going back to Vancouver, which by the way, I think Vancouver is an international hockey tournament, may have been, if not the best tournament of all time, one of the best I've seen. The hockey was excellent from everybody, the countries, each and every year. If you think there's going to be a blowout because you don't think the Swiss are any good, or the Germans aren't very good, or you look at what Slovenia is doing, I got news for you. Hockey comes from everywhere. It is harder and harder every year to actually win a medal. But this one, honestly, Liam, it couldn't hold. I'm happy for the guys out there. It's a moment for their families, and I think Canada also sort of turns that little switch when they realize it's not the best versus the best, so people aren't jumping off the buildings when they lost to Germany. But I think good for them for winning the bronze, but it was really hard to hold my attention, Liam. Really hard.
Well, look, I know, like you said, we're up against the clock, and I don't blame you for that. I think that's the feeling from the majority, and I think whoever did watch it or tuned in and was hoping, and we'd maybe do better than bronze, was understanding of the fact of the level of quality that we had on the ice there. And it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Like, we can't control that, so it is what it is. That was the Olympics prior to '98. That's what they were. We had a little bit of a blip on the radar screen with Lindros and company in '92 and Paul Correa in '94, and we got back-to-back silver medals. Made some noise there. But if you go back to the '80s, we didn't play in '72 and '76, but in the '60s with our national team, that's what we were, right, Mike? I mean, we basically no chance to win, or very little chance to win, and we send a group of cast-offs that had very little chance, if any, maybe with a couple of them that would play in the NHL. This case here was the reverse of that. These guys had already all played in the NHL, except for two of them who never did, and they were past their prime, and they did their best. So it was very difficult. Like you said, you got 5 Olympics, 98, 02, 06, 2010, 2014, of which we won 3, to look at this and get really excited about what you were seeing on the ice. Especially anybody who is a hockey fan understands the semantics of the game even a little bit and could see how much the lesser the talent was. In Germany's case, well, they knock off Sweden, who won the World Championship last year. They knock us off, and then they take the Russians to overtime. Mm-hmm. So, clearly this particular German team, which, by the way, 16 of their guys were in the World Championship last year, and they played in the Spengler, and they played in the Izvestia, and they played in like 3 other they had some fluidity to their game, and they played well, and good on them. They earned the silver medal.
Yeah.
You see them after getting the pictures of the Russians and everything, like, good on them. The thing is, Mike, is that I don't know what's going to happen here in this next CBA. It can be open in 2020, but at the very least, it's over in 2021. The next Olympics in 2022. Gary Bettman's already fired the first volley. We don't know if we're going or not. And if the players want to argue to have it in the CBA, problem is that they're going to probably lose some of the battle on the escrow, which is going to lead the battle under the next CBA. So I don't know that we're going to see the NHL guys in Beijing. I don't know that we will. And you may be forced to see the same thing, which means we may have to revert back to, hopefully, what we would get from the Canada Cups, which I think collectively, at least by a final, because you got the best of 3 final in '87 that went 3 games, 2 of them in overtime, all 3 games 6-5. I know what you're saying about Vancouver. It was great. Canada had to win 4 games in 6 nights to win the gold medal in 2010, and it culminates with Crosby of the golden goal. Yep. On this date, by the way.
Oh, really?
This is the anniversary of it. It was February 28th, 5:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the 7:40 mark of overtime. Iggy, as Crosby yelled for Ginley to pass him the puck. It was on February 28th, on this date 8 years ago. But we may be forced to revert back and hope that Bettman and company get it together in the World Cup and we get what we saw in the Canada Cups or the '96 World Cup if you're an American fan or whatever, because it doesn't look early out of the gate even that we're going to be in Beijing in 2022. So that's just reality, my friend.
Liam, quickly, I noticed on your Twitter account that you said a 4th book is on the way.
Oh.
How far away is on the way, and can we dig into it a little bit for a quick, brief second? You don't have to give it away, but we will be talking about once you release it. You know that.
Oh, listen, I'd very much appreciate that. Right now we're on the hunt for a publisher. I've got a big proposal going out to an American publisher. So far, 2 Canadian guys have said no. It's a little disappointing, but we'll keep on plugging. I'm writing a life story. I'm stepping away from the hockey trivia, and I'm doing the life story of the real Ogie Oglethorpe from Slapshot. The real guy.
Yes.
The real Ogie Oglethorpe is a man named Bill Goldie Goldthorpe. Now, you guys know I've been around. I've met a lot of people in the sport of hockey. I have never, ever, ever in my entire life met anybody like this man. This was a guy who was once regarded as the world's most violent athlete. He played 11 years pro, played in the minors, never played in the NHL, but he was in NHL camps, but he played in the WHA. He brawled his way on and off the ice in proportions that can only be described as epic. And I use that term, and it's not even in a close proximity of what he really did in his life. He was incarcerated 17 times, all for assaults. He never smoked, never did drugs, occasional drinker, bodybuilder, worked out on weights, absolutely hates anybody who hits a woman, hates anybody who hits a child, hates anybody who hits an animal, and he hates bullies. He's an immediate 911, and he snaps on and off the ice. And this story, when it does get printed, and it will get printed, I think is going to turn a page excuse the pun, is going to turn a page in the book industry with sports athletes combination. There's no story like what this guy has from coming out of the womb in Northern Ontario, Hornpain, Ontario, all the way down to California. He was shot. He was stabbed. The story is unfreaking believable.
Oh,
Unbelievable.
This is going to be awesome.
Wow.
Now, do I understand also there's a possibility that you could be in studio with us sometime next month?
It's a very strong possibility, Mike, and I'm hoping to get down there in the month of March. As you know, I celebrate St. Patrick's Day all month, and I'm hoping to get down to Toronto, and I would love to get in studio with you and maybe have a shot at Jameson's at some point in the month of month of March, I should say, with you guys. It would be an absolute treat for me. I'm going to do my best to do it, and it looks like it's going to happen.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, that is fantastic. Liam, one of my all-time favorites and a good friend. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's a great way to get through the week here on a Wednesday. Looking forward to seeing you. The book sounds fantastic. You take care, and for all the people, as I said, going to Ottawa, I see our friend Ted the Viking from Blade Tape.
Yes.
He's going to pop by and see you.
Yeah, anybody listening, there's a restaurant called Liam Maguire's in the east end of the city. It's very easy to find. It's 4 lights off the highway as you're leaving the city on the east end. You message me on Twitter or get a hold of me. The 3/4 of the world has my cell phone number. Just message me, and I'll meet you there, and I'm buying the first round.
Oh, you're the best. You are absolutely the best. Thanks so much for joining today, and we'll see you really soon. Bye.
You got it, fellas. Have a good one.
Thanks,
G'day.
Liam. That book sounds awesome.
Liam Maguire.
Get out
You
there.
don't get better than that.
No, you don't.
And St. Patrick's Day could be St. Patrick's Month when you think about it. Unless you're a fucking heathen. Then I don't need you anyway.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.